If you could take your seats, we'd like to get started with our third panel. Our third panel, we're going to be talking about the role of energy efficiency and renewable energy. Our moderator is Dr. Jeremy Richardson, who is a native of West Virginia, got his BS in physics right here from WVU before getting a Ph.D. and an MS in physics from the University of Colorado Boulder. Jeremy is a senior energy analyst in the climate and energy program at the Union of Concerned Scientists. We've been working with Jeremy for a number of years on projects here in West Virginia. He's very interested in the transition in the coal industry in West Virginia, given his, well, he could talk about the heritage of his family in the coal industry. So here's Jeremy as our moderator. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Jamie. And it's great to be here. And you're right, I always, when people say or when I introduce myself as being from Washington, D.C., I always hasten to add that I'm actually from West Virginia, from a third-generation coal mining family. And my brother is a coal miner today and lives in Barrickville, which is not far south of here. So I just want to say thanks again to Jamie for convening this conference and for inviting me to be here. And I appreciate all your leadership on these issues over the past few years. It's really great to come to West Virginia and hear sort of really honest conversation about where we're heading and how we can solve the very real problems we have in front of us. So as an aside, I just wanted to do a little shameless self-promotion, which is we did just release a report last week at the Union of Concerned Scientists that looks at the economic viability of the existing fleet of coal-fired generators, and you can find that report on our website, and the link is ucsusa.org/coal transition. You can find that. And I particularly, the podcast that we did in association with that report was really fun and features some voices from West Virginia. So if you get a chance to check that out. And without any more of me rambling on, I really want to get to our great panelists that we have for this session. I won't belabor the intros, but I do want to just introduce them to you briefly. First, we'll hear from Jim Fawcett, who is the Director of Customer Services and Business Development at Appalachian Power. And then we will hear from Autumn Long, Program Director with Solar United Neighbors of West Virginia. And finally, from Evan Hansen, who's the founder of Downstream Strategies, a consulting firm here in Morgantown. So I guess without further ado, maybe I'll hand it over to you, Jim.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, and I know everybody just ate lunch, so feel free to stand up, walk around, whatever it is that you need to do to be able to stay awake. I understand completely. So I'm with Appalachian Power, which is part of American Electric Power, and I give you that distinguishment to let you know. As I'm going through the presentation, I'll try and point it out, but I'll be talking a little bit about what American Electric Power is doing as a whole. We're 7 different operating companies across 11 states, and then more specifically what Appalachian Power is doing. Appalachian Power serves about 500,000 customers in West Virginia, 500,000 customers in Virginia, and 50,000 in Tennessee. And what I'm going to try and get across to you today is what we've been doing as far as in the renewables and energy efficiency realm, and what we plan to do, and a little bit about the decision making that goes into that, how we decide what that next resource is going to be. So. We are seeing quite a bit of transition in our fleet, as you've probably read about. I mean, several of our coal plants we've retired over the past few years. All of our coal plants that are still operating are the fully compliant and scrubbed plants, and as Sarah was mentioning earlier, they're very efficient. We've done measures to make them some of the most efficient as far as a heat rate perspective in the country, even going as far as retrofitting some of the turbines to make them generate more electricity and be more efficient on the turbine end as well. But outside of that, we've also integrated quite a few renewables And a lot of people aren't familiar with the renewables that we've had in our portfolio for quite some time. But I'm going to show you just briefly as I go through this some of the reductions that we've seen in our emissions, and then also talk a little bit about our transmission grid and how it helps to facilitate some of the renewables that are being added across the system. So this is the AEP look, and as you can see there, our coal usage has dropped significantly. You probably can't see the numbers there, but I've got them here in front of me. So the coal usage to date, got to keep the microphone, we've dropped from 68% to 47%. The natural gas has gone up a little bit from 23% to 27%. Nuclear is staying about the same. We have one nuclear plant that's up in the Michigan area. And our hydro and wind investments have gone from about 2% up to 13%. And our energy efficiency programs continue to increase to where we're about 6% now. Looking on a more local level, this is the Appalachian Power view, and you'll see there that our coal base and Appalachian Power at one time was significantly in the 90% coal-based generation, but it went from 74% in 2012 down to 61% currently, and expected to go to 51% over the next 15 years. The main things that we're doing to offset that is natural gas combined cycle generation for the base load, and we continue to put a significant amount of wind energy onto our system, and we're starting into the solar foray. This gives it to you a little bit more specifically as far as our renewables. If you look at the second line down there, that's Appalachian Power Company. We have 700 and, it's hard to read the numbers exactly, 700 and some odd of owned megawatts of renewables. That's all hydro facilities that we have. If you're familiar with Smith Mountain Lake, that's a pump storage facility that we have in Virginia, and it's a very large project, and one that it would be very hard to duplicate in this day and age, but it's a very efficient project. Of the PPA megawatts there, it's 455 megawatts, and all but 80 megawatts of that is wind power that we have under contract. The 80 megawatts is Summersville Hydro that we have on the Summersville Dam there. As far as our investment, I just wanted to give you a look at this just to see the enormity of it, but over the past 17 years there, we've invested $8.5 billion in emissions reductions, and that is equated to right around a 46% reduction in our CO2 emissions. It's reduced the SO2 by 94%, the NOx by 89%, and our mercury has been reduced by 87% over that time period. So this is a forward-looking slide that shows where our investments will be made. And primarily, you'll see that we're looking at wind energy, and some of the discussions I've had with folks just over meals. As we're looking at these, and I'm going one of the next slides here talks about our decision factors, but we put these together. And it's interesting then that it gets a lot of press and a lot of discussion with our integrated resource plans. But those integrated resource plans are just that. They're a plan going forward that's ever changing. When we did our solar RFP last year, we were pretty surprised by the price of it. And we are primarily driven through economic decisions. Our customers are our primary focus. And so we are looking for what is the most economical next kilowatt hour that we can provide for those customers. Certainly, we take into consideration all the other factors around that, but especially in this state, that's one of the main things that gets looked at. And so here we talk about some of the decision makers, And as we look at this, we look at what is the forecasted need. And one of the things that's kind of a driver there is there's two kinds of power that we're looking at. The capacity, the amount that we need on the hottest day in July or August, whatever day that is, to meet the total needs. We have to have that capacity to be able to provide that for our customers. And then there's the energy component. Well, at the current time, we're beyond our capacity needs. So we're not in need of any new capacity, but we are short on energy. So that plays well with the renewable investments, and that renewables do provide more of an energy play than a capacity play. Not that they don't contribute to the capacity, but that is the primary contribution of them. So as we look at that, then we're looking at what are the available options and what are the most economical options. And then the last thing is we look at it from the customer's perspective. And this is something that's becoming very serious in West Virginia. As you look at what is the energy burden for the customer, as you're all probably very familiar with. I mean, we have some economically challenged folks in this state, and we are starting to look at this as far as what is their energy burden, comparing their income to what their energy bill is. And we know that there's a tipping point there that it just makes it out of range for that. So we're very sensitive to any investments that we make and the costs that come from that. So this gives you just a look at, as we're looking at different sources. And I know some of you are probably scratching your head there and thinking that maybe some of those should be different. This is a good example of as soon as this stuff gets published, it changes. And interestingly enough, I looked at the presentation that Mr. Patton did here at the last energy conference, and the solar price, and we get these from government, the EIA books, and the solar price was $114 whenever he did this presentation. So that tells you the movement that you see in solar prices. And wind is continuing to come down from that point as well. This is just the last published prices that were out there. And I put the capacity factors there just to let you see that as far as that goes into our decision making. As you're looking at your coal and your natural gas plants, those have capacity factors upwards of 87%. And so that's dispatchable power. Our customers expect to have the lights on or the power usage 24 hours a day, and so we have to be able to provide that, and we can supplement that with the renewables. Certainly the advent of batteries is going to change that at some point in time. We just don't know when that's going to be and when it's going to become affordable. So I went ahead and included this. This is one of our companies, Public Service Oklahoma, and I kind of put this in here just as a description as you're looking for what does the perfect project look like, and as you're trying to do this. Obviously it's not duplicatable in West Virginia, but this is a project called Windcatcher that we're doing in Public Service Oklahoma. It's a 2,000 megawatt wind farm that we're doing in the Western Panhandle out there, and we're needing to build 350 miles of transmission line to connect this. But even with that 350 miles of 765, this is going to reduce rates on day one in that service territory. So this is kind of what the perfect project looks like. And the hinge there that differentiates it is the wind out there is so strong. That one's going to have a capacity factor beyond 50%. Wow. So it's if we can just find a way to harness a little bit more wind, but the turbines do. They continue to get more efficient, and so we'll see that. But I just wanted to share that as part of this presentation. Moving to our energy efficiency efforts. I mean, this is something that we've been engaged with, and several familiar faces in here have been along for the ride with me on this as we introduced these in 2010, and we've continued to do it. We see these as an opportunity to help our customers. I mean, this is certainly a way to reduce the environmental impact, but it's also a way to help our customers to reduce their usage. As we look at that, I mean, as the prices go up, this gives customers a tool to be able to reduce their usage, which will ultimately reduce their cost. And both us, as I mentioned, and the Public Service Commission are very sensitive to rates. We have a case, and it actually goes to hearing this coming Monday, and as I'm leaving here, I'll be prepping for it. But the Public Service Commission staff actually came out against all of our energy efficiency programs, and their position that they took is that we should put them on a hiatus and not do them at all. That's not our feeling, and we did provide rebuttal testimony to that, and we do feel like that they are very economical and that they should continue. And as far as creating awareness, that's one of the difficult things. We continue to try and get that out there, and it's frustrating from our perspective in that we do a lot of advertising around this, do a lot of direct mail, a lot of bill inserts, and some of the creative advertising includes Pandora and things like that. But you still, as you see different surveys, J.D. Power does a survey for us, you see awareness of the programs down in the 30 to 50%. So we're getting good participation, but it's just difficult to reach people about these. And then the last thing, it kind of falls into what some of the other folks have talked about, but there's a lot of opportunity in this state because there's not that many contractors that are doing specific energy efficiency type projects. So there's not a lot of competition, and we have to kind of drive the industry from our perspective at this point. So this is what we've been able to accomplish with our energy efficiency programs. You can see that they launched there in 2011. We were able to accomplish about 30 million kilowatt hour reduction that year. And you see how it goes up and then kind of drops off. And somebody out there is thinking, you bunch of slackers, you're letting it slide there. But what that's a result of is actually our results of our programs are looking at what's the effect of our programs compared to government standards. So 2014 there is where you saw a lot of those new standards come in. And so where we used to be replacing a 100-watt incandescent light bulb with 13 watt or 10 watt, depending on whether it was compact fluorescent or LED, and taking that delta as a savings, that standard has now come down. So you're looking at 72 watts as the government standard equivalent of a 100 watt. That's what the halogen is that will replace it compared to an LED. So we're still seeing the same level of results. It's harder to get the same savings because of those government standards changing. And we did launch in Virginia as well. You see that come out in 2015 and 16 there. So the portfolio of programs that we're doing in the state, I won't go through all of them, but I will highlight some of the ones that are new that I'm kind of excited about. The E-Score program, we've had a program in place where we'll go out and do a home audit for a customer, tell them where they can save. Once they have that audit, then they qualify for certain rebates that are available through the program. This is kind of the next generation of that, and this allows customers to participate without getting the home audit first, but then they get the home audit, and as part of the home audit, they give them a score, and it gives them a pathway forward of how they get to a 10 or whatever scale it is that we put that on. So if they need an additional 6 inches of insulation in their attic, they've changed out their heat pump to a high-efficiency heat pump, changing out lighting, different things like that. It provides a pathway forward of how they get to being the most energy efficient, and it provides a communication system so that we can encourage them to take those next steps and update them as different opportunities come along. The multifamily direct install program is going to be a new one. We haven't had anything so far for multifamily type dwellings, and so this is one where if we can arrange it with the property owner, then we'll send somebody out there, and it's primarily just the in-unit fixtures that we'll be doing and changing out the lighting, putting in the smart strips and the low flow aerators and things like that. And then Bring Your Own Thermostat is another residential program. It's one where these Wi-Fi thermostats, it's similar to our peak reduction load control program. to where if a customer puts one of those in and gives us access to it to be able to utilize it during peak times of the summer, then we pay them an incentive annually to participate in that program. And then the other programs, the Small Business Direct Install Program, that's one where we're going to try and work a little bit with more of the small businesses and engage them with contractors, do the actual audit, show the payback, and arrange for the contractor so that it's kind of a turnkey project for smaller businesses that don't have the facilities to do the investigation and everything. With that, I am done, and I think we're taking questions at the end, so I will take my seat.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Come on up, Autumn.
If you have questions, we'll be circulating 3x5 cards and collecting them and giving them to Jeremy as the moderator, and he'll pose the questions to the panelists. So I'll make sure we can circulate some 3x5 cards.
I don't know how to not show the next slide.
It's up there. It just shows up on that.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Autumn Long with Solar United Neighbors. We were formerly known as West Virginia Sun. Some of you might know us as that. Our parent organization was formerly Community Power Network, now Solar United Neighbors, and we're Solar United Neighbors of West Virginia. So we have undergone a recent name and logo change. So I hope everyone will become familiar with us as Solar United Neighbors, and that name will start to stick. So I'm going to talk about distributed solar today, and Jim alluded to a lot of the utility scale developments that are going on to get more renewables into our energy system, and we work with communities, residents, and to build the distributed solar market. So I'm really excited about distributed solar. I'm really excited about rooftop solar. I think it has a great potential to fundamentally change our energy system in ways that makes our energy system more equitable, more democratic, and that empowers folks who have been historically consumers of energy to become producers of energy as well, and to be a part of the energy system and take a role in it that has formerly really been unavailable to individual residents and citizens and business owners. So I'm going to give you kind of like the 20,000 foot view of the solar industry in the United States. And I know this slide is terrible and has no beautiful pictures on it. Evan has some similar data in his presentation, and I think some much prettier slides than this. So perhaps we can revisit that in Evan's presentation. But you know, the solar industry in the United States is absolutely booming. It's now, according to the solar job census done by the Solar Foundation, there's over 260,000 U.S. citizens working in the solar industry. The U.S. DOE Energy and Jobs Report puts that number about 100,000 higher than that, but the Solar Foundation uses a more direct way to count those jobs. So these are people who are spending the majority of their time or all of their time in solar. The solar workforce, you know, it's increased by 25% just in the past year, and every year in the past 5 years it has grown by at least 20%. So we're seeing huge, huge gains. 1 out of every 50 new jobs is in solar. There's over 1.5 million solar arrays deployed and currently making power across the nation today, accounting for closing in on 50 gigawatts of capacity. And a lot of that is directly due to the economics of solar. Solar pricing has come down precipitously in the past few years. It's more affordable than ever, And in some markets, as Jim alluded to, it has reached grid parity with other forms of energy on the open market. So it's really an exciting time to be in the energy industry, to be in the solar industry. And that leaves us, you know, in a position here in West Virginia to take advantage of our history as an energy state and to continue our role as an energy state, but to ensure that we are taking advantage of the new renewable energy options that are coming into this system in the 21st century. So it's really important to me personally, to our organization, and I think to a lot of the people in this room today, that West Virginia doesn't get left behind as we make this transition toward renewables and we undergo these very big changes in our energy system. So where are we in West Virginia? Well, we're not at the top of solar deployment or solar jobs. We're pretty near the bottom nationally. According to the U.S. Energy and Jobs Report, there are 381 solar jobs in the state, but I don't know where those jobs are. And if anyone has any insight into that, I would love to know. I suspect there is some element of manufacturing going on somewhere in the state that is used in some aspect of solar, be it a chip or a clip or a wire or something like that. That's just a guess, because there's certainly, I don't think I could count up nearly 381 solar installers or direct solar oriented manufacturers in the state. So that's a mystery. This is saying there's 19 solar companies, including 11 installers. Those numbers might be a little outdated, but I think I could get pretty close to counting up 11 solar installers working in West Virginia currently. From what I know, I deal with installers a lot, so I think those are pretty realistic numbers. The PSC requires our utilities to issue an annual net metering report. So each utility, like AP, First Energy, other subsidiaries, they submit a report every year to the PSC detailing the number of net metered solar units that have been deployed in their territories and the kilowatt capacity of those units and their kilowatt hour capacity. So the 5.3 megawatts of net metered solar and 701 net metered solar arrays, those come from this year's PSC reports from the utilities. So it's not possible to break that out geographically beyond the utility territory. We don't know where those units are in the state, but those are pretty recent numbers, and I'm excited to see them because the capacity is growing pretty quickly every year in West Virginia. You know, we're at 46th nationally installed solar capacity, and yet, you know, solar jobs are growing in this state through installation and training, and you're going to hear more about that. So what do we do? What is our role in this? Solar United Neighbors is a nonprofit. We are dedicated to helping people go solar and to representing the needs and the rights of solar owners and solar supporters. So we do that through a variety of means. We advocate and we educate. We do a lot of public education. And we also develop what we call solar co-ops. So I'm going to explain what a solar co-op is, but I also just want to give you a sense of our work up to this point in West Virginia and the role we play in developing this industry. We have engaged over 1,000 people through our work throughout the state, through co-ops, through public info sessions, through outreach events. Our co-ops have resulted in over 100 distributed solar installs throughout West Virginia in the past 3 years, 103 and counting, and there are new contracts getting signed every day, so more and more people are going solar. We're up to 663 kilowatts of distributed solar, which, you know, that's not a lot in the scheme of things when you're looking at utility, you know, need, but for a homeowner, for a business owner, For us, for a school or a church or a nonprofit or a government building, a solar installation on your roof or your property can significantly impact your energy costs, your household costs. It can be a real source of savings for you and your family and your community. So the energy savings and the economic impact on our communities is really significant. So what is a solar co-op? I've said that a few times, and some of you are familiar with our co-ops. Actually, I think there are some solar co-op members in the audience today. Can you raise your hand if you've gone solar with a solar co-op? All right, there's one, there's two. How about, can I see how many people have solar panels? All right, great, awesome, okay. So a solar co-op is essentially a bulk purchase model. We administrate and organize these groups in concert with local community organizations and community partners on the ground in their local communities. We have some great solar champions here today. So we get a group of folks in a specific town or area of the state to all get together and go solar at the same time with our help and support throughout the process. And this really, it ensures that folks are getting fair and competitive pricing, and it gives them the confidence that we are acting as their advocate. We're a neutral third party. We don't have any special relationships with specific installers, so our co-op members can trust us to give them, unbiased advice and to advocate for them throughout the process. So once we get a critical mass of people together in one of these groups, which is generally a minimum of 20 or 30 good qualified members, then we issue an RFP to local installers who submit proposals. The co-op members then get together and they review the proposals with our assistance to answer any questions they might have to guide them through the process. But it's the co-op members themselves who select a single installer to service everyone in the group. And then every group member gets the same base pricing. So you're educating people about solar, you're getting people to go solar, but you're also developing a real community of solar supporters who understand how solar works, what it can do for them, and who also are then deployable when there are policy issues that may come up in the future. We are building an army of solar supporters and advocates who care about this technology and understand its benefits. We really think that solar can lead to significant economic impacts in our communities and in our state. And our solar co-ops develop the demand side of that market. And in this state, this is still a really nascent market. There's not solar on every house or every block. You don't see it that often. So if we want to develop this industry in the state, the first step is really to develop that customer demand that then will allow local companies and entrepreneurs to grow their businesses and to grow the solar industry. So we also help solar installers lower their costs through delivering them a group of educated customers. They spend a significant amount of money on generating leads, as in a lot of businesses. That is a challenge. So we also provide them with the stability of knowing that they're going to have this group of customers in the future. And we keep doing these co-ops so the installers are aware that this is a stable and growing market. And it's all about keeping our wealth in our local communities. The energy savings are really significant. Solar panels are warrantied for 25 years. These are systems that will be producing power for you for decades into the future. And so even in a state like West Virginia, which does have fairly low electric rates relative to other areas of the country, solar is still a really good financial investment. In fact, I would be hard-pressed to think of another investment that has such a great return as solar. We see about a 10 to 12 year payback period on average for a residential solar install, depending on the details of that, of the contract. But after that initial payback period, you're continuing to save money on your electric bills for many, many more years. So for average homeowners, for small businesses, it's a great way to lower your costs, to increase your profit margins, and to increase the value of your property as well. So, so that's why I'm excited about what I do, the work I do every day. It's tangible. The impacts we're having are, they're real, and it's really exciting to see people get educated about solar and to find out how much it can benefit them. So I also just want to say that I really think distributed solar energy has the potential to blow open the current paradigm of our energy system. I mentioned before that folks who have historically been consumers of energy now have an opportunity to be producers of that energy. In fact, the term prosumers is becoming kind of popular in the solar industry, so that's cool. But, we're going to see the way our energy system operates change dramatically in this 21st century. And I am excited to be a part of that. I invite you all to be a part of that as well. Those of you who haven't yet gone solar, I would like to issue an invitation to each of you to consider it for your own home or business, and to come talk to me about it if you have any questions afterward. I'd love to help you navigate the process. There are some significant policy barriers, and we'll be discussing that at a later panel this afternoon. So some of you might have questions about those things, and we'll answer them as we can, but there will be another panel discussion about that. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Autumn. And Evan, come on up.
All right, hello. My name's Evan Hansen. I'm president of Downstream Strategies, and I'm going to talk a little bit, well, a lot about solar. So we're going to have a lot about solar in this session, but also a little bit about some of the reports that Downstream Strategies has released, and then I'll end it by talking about the efforts in Morgantown to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But Downstream is a company that's based here in Morgantown. We've got a staff of 13, and most of us work up here in Morgantown. We've got 2 people down in Alderson. And we do a wide variety of projects related to environmental science and environmental policy. A lot of our projects have something to do with renewable energy or water issues. And our clients are pretty diverse. We work for federal and state agencies, for local cities and counties, nonprofits, universities, and attorneys. So we're pretty diverse now. We started 20 years ago working mostly with nonprofits, but that's a much smaller percentage of our clients these days. And Autumn, I think, gave a good overview of solar, but I'm going to do sort of an overlapping overview and make sure that people see that, we may not have the best solar resources in the country. They're not comparable to what we have in the desert Southwest, but they're ample. They're comparable with our neighboring states of Ohio and Pennsylvania in terms of kilowatt hours per unit area per day. So we have enough where we could have solar systems like Autumn talked about that pay for themselves within about a decade now. However, we're very far behind neighboring states. And a previous speaker mentioned the state energy plan, which is out for comment now. And I grabbed these numbers from that draft plan. And this is the amount of installed solar capacity in West Virginia and our neighboring states. And there's 2 bars for each state. The blue bar is the utility scale solar, like Jim was talking about. And the orange bar is the net metered solar, like Autumn was talking about. And West Virginia is here. We're at the bottom. We have no utility scale solar yet in West Virginia. And according to these numbers, we had 4 megawatts of net metered, and Autumn showed 5.3 on her slide. So this is apparently a little out of date. And you know, some states like North Carolina and New Jersey, they're in the thousands of megawatts, and we're down at 4. So that means we haven't done much, but it also means we have a lot of potential. And one way to look at what's coming in the future is the projects in the Pjm Queue. These are projects that are either in the planning stage or in the construction stage. And I grabbed these numbers just earlier this week from the queue for the same states as the previous slide. And West Virginia is not at the bottom. In this case, Tennessee is, but we only have 35 megawatts in the queue. And again, that's related to that's as compared to thousands of megawatts in some neighboring states. And those 35 megawatts in the queue in West Virginia, there's 2 projects. There's a 5 megawatt project in Greenbrier County that's been sitting there in the queue for years now. And then there's a relatively new 30 megawatt project in Mason County. We're at a time, we're at a time at the federal level, at least, of great uncertainty in terms of where our energy and climate policy is going, although I think we know where it's headed, at least in the near future. Previous speaker was talking about that. You know, we see things like the Clean Power Plan on its way out. And we also don't see many great incentives in West Virginia to move toward renewables or efficiency for that matter. But that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of movement that's going on and a lot more that's going to be done. And one reason for that are these corporate sustainability goals. Google, for example, has a goal that they've already achieved of 100% renewables. Amazon Web Services, a similar goal, and they're a long way there. And it's not just the new economy firms like these, it's firms like Walmart that's also committed to 100% renewable energy. So these are some of the things that are going to drive renewable energy development at large scales, at the utility scale, hopefully even in places like West Virginia. We hear a lot about things like making West Virginia more attractive to outside investments, and there are lots of different approaches to that. One of the approaches that's being talked about a lot now is lowering tax rates for corporate taxes, but this is certainly something that has to be on policymakers' agenda, because companies like this are not going to come to a state like West Virginia where more than 95% of our electricity is coming from coal. It's just a non-starter. They're not going to come here no matter how low the tax rates are and no matter how flat the land is. So we have to work on this. Autumn also mentioned the jobs, and this is from that same source that Autumn mentioned, that we've now got 260,000 solar jobs across the country. So these are real jobs. There's going to be more and more jobs, and the question is, where are these jobs going to be? Are they going to be in every state except West Virginia, or are we going to have policies and programs in place here to attract as many of those jobs as possible to West Virginia? If we truly want to diversify our economy and we truly want to bring every job possible into the state, then there's a huge number of jobs here that are ready and waiting for us to take advantage of if we can just attract these types of investments. So I'll move on now to a couple of the reports that we put out recently at Downstream. This is one that Joey James, who's in the audience, and I wrote earlier this year, and it looked across West Virginia at degraded lands and the possibility of siting solar on these degraded lands. And by degraded lands, we're talking about formerly mined lands, talking about brownfield sites, Superfund sites, and things like that. And the issue with a lot of these degraded lands is that it's a challenge to get productive economic use of those lands. They're often remote. They might have environmental liabilities. There might be limits on what can be done on those sites. And I think there's sort of a broad consensus among a lot of people in West Virginia that energy production of one sort of or another would be a good use of these lands. So we set out to do basically a desktop analysis to identify sites that had the right characteristics for large-scale solar. So that included things like proximity to the electrical infrastructure and enough flat land and things like that. And perhaps unsurprisingly, we found that there's a lot of these sites. And this is just the sites that we looked at on post-mine land. There are other types of degraded land as well. And there are dozens of these sites in the southern coal fields and also up around this part of the state. One example is here in Morgantown at the industrial park across the river. This is, if you're familiar with Morgantown and you're driving in from I-68 and you look to your left, you've seen these stockpiles of pipes here. And on the other side, Angie mentioned these big pipelines that are going in or potentially going in West Virginia. Well, the pipe's already ready to go. But in between these two stockpiles of pipes, there's an abandoned mine land that is also a Superfund site. And we developed a project concept with the owner of the land there who has very limited options for what he can do on that land because there's polluted groundwater. It's a Superfund site. But what he does have in the industrial park is tenants that are very large electricity users. And he's interested in putting a large solar array there that would be net metered to one of the large industrial users. So this would technically not be a utility scale project. It would be behind the meter, a net metered project. And we're currently looking for funding for this. We have an application in a certain program, and if that doesn't work, we're going to look elsewhere. But this is a real opportunity to tie renewable energy development to maintaining manufacturing jobs in West Virginia. And I think that's one type of strategy that could be a model if we can get some of these built. Well, I think any type of solar development is positive. If we could tie it to manufacturing jobs and more traditional types of economic development, I think it might get past some of the hesitancy among some of the state leaders who don't really want to do anything to support solar. So let's try to find ways to link it up with more traditional economic development. The second report that I wanted to pull a couple numbers from was also co-authored with Joey, but also with Alan Collins here from WVU. And we were hired by the Solar Workgroup of Southwest Virginia, which is an organization that includes not just nonprofits, but people from the state regulatory agency and universities and others. And that's the part of Virginia that borders West Virginia and shares a lot in common with our southern coal fields. And the work group has identified a number of viable sites for commercial solar development and is also looking at drastically increasing the amount of residential solar as well as some large utility scale projects. And our job was to take this 10-year solar development scenario and estimate the number of jobs that would be created. So again, we had 3 different scenarios: residential, commercial, and utility scale solar. And over that 10-year period, we averaged the jobs. And there's different types of jobs. There's the direct and indirect and induced jobs. And if you add all these up together, we're in the hundreds of jobs. So this shows that solar really does create jobs, hundreds to thousands of jobs for this type of a scenario. And that's a significant amount. We need every job we can get if we're going to make up for the job losses that we've had in West Virginia, and if we're going to turn the corner and actually grow the economy. And solar is one way to help do that. And then I wanted to close by talking about the work that we've done with the city of Morgantown. And this is a series of reports that we did with support from the Appalachian Stewardship Foundation. And it started several years ago with a community greenhouse gas inventory for the city of Morgantown. And as far as we know, this is the first greenhouse gas inventory for any unit of government in West Virginia. And we use just some standard methods that are used across the country to inventory greenhouse gases. And that's a baseline. And then phase 2 was looking in more detail at where the biggest opportunities are for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and in particular, identify the commercial and residential sectors as those that had the most cost-effective options. And then the third phase was kind of envisioning what a program would look like, a sustainable Morgantown initiative that would help actually get people and businesses to make these investments in renewable energy and energy efficiency to reduce their emissions. Now, it's kind of a challenge to get anything done at the state level or the local level. So we did this with the cooperation, I would say, of the local government, but at the time, they weren't exactly thrilled about it. I mean, we had the support of the mayor and the city manager and things like that, but they weren't about to spend any money or take any strong stands on this. But things changed with the election just a few months ago. There was a city election in Morgantown in April, and it was sort of a wave election, and all 7 candidates that won were the progressive candidates. And one of the things that they were very interested in was signing on to the goals in the Paris Accord. So this is part of that unreadable document, which is what they signed back in May. So it was actually one of the first things they did after they came into city council. So they resolved that Morgantown's going to join the cities in the Climate Mayors Network in adopting and supporting the goals of the Paris Agreement. That they're committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions through a climate action plan, and that they're going to identify the potential benefits and costs of adopting cost-effective policies and programs to promote the long-term goal of greenhouse gas emissions. And I think one lesson here is just that sometimes in working with governments, you sort of have to be opportunistic. A lot depends on who's elected at that time. And you may not be able to do everything at once. It may not be always a linear process. But I think about the fact that this was passed just a few months ago, and it really built upon the efforts that we did several years before that. That what we did before laid the groundwork for the work that's being done now. And they're actually moving toward implementation, and there's a couple things that are happening in that regard. One is something that started several years ago, which was an energy savings performance contract that the city entered into with a private company to retrofit some of the high energy using systems in the city buildings. And some of the results are starting to come in now, and it's a little bit hard to track these things because, you know, one winter might be colder than another, things like that. But it appears that we are seeing energy savings at these city buildings, which is what we're supposed to be seeing after these investments, so that's a good thing. But there's still more to do. And another energy audit was recently completed on behalf of the Green Team for the city, and they identified several more buildings for which there were cost-effective investments that could be made and that would pay back in a relatively short amount of time. So these 6 or 7 buildings in total can generate $55,000 of savings per year at a cost of $142,000. So that's a payback period of less than 3 years. So there's a whole second layer of energy efficiency measures that could be implemented at the city level, even though that performance contract was put in place several years ago. There was a lot of debate, not just at city council, but among the broader community when they were considering signing on to the Paris targets. And a lot of people just didn't like the idea of the city taking a position like that. But what the city councilors said over and over again is that this is about saving taxpayers money. This is about doing common sense energy efficiency that we know will pay for itself quickly. And adopting those targets gives us a framework to work within and gives us some targets. But what we're really going to do is find cost-effective ways to save taxpayers money. And that's what they're doing. And I think it's going to work. And I guess I would close by saying this is a model for other communities across West Virginia or for the state. Any unit of government can sign on to those Paris targets and can take steps like this to reduce their energy use. There's a lot of energy efficiency that can be done across West Virginia. So why not follow the lead of Morgantown and do something similar? So thanks. It's time for questions.
Thanks a lot to our panelists. So we have about a half hour or so for questions. Thank you. And I wanted to start it off with, thank you. A couple of questions for Jim. One was sort of mine and one that has come in from the audience. So can you tell us a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of how the energy efficiency programs that you have proposed and the ones that you're sort of implementing now, like how they work for the consumers? And I'm thinking specifically of the pay-as-you-save program that I think the state of Arkansas has had some success in terms of a model whereby the utility has access to capital. It can sort of invest in a particular improvement at a given home, and then the ratepayer doesn't have to figure out how to pay for those upfront costs of that improvement. I'm just curious sort of how it works in the programs that you have. And the question from the audience was around sort of what kinds of things can be done to help change the attitude of the PSC towards some of the programs that you've proposed and met with some resistance on.
Okay, sure, thanks. So as far as the nuts and bolts, and because Evan just put the example up there, I'll use that. One of our C&I programs provides, and I'm assuming a lot of those opportunities were with lighting because the payback's so short. So with a project like that, we would be involved, and we have rebates available for the C&I customers. We have an outreach person that goes out and calls on different folks that are just good opportunities there. And a lot of these where you have like a parking garage, many of those, the lights have to be on 24 hours a day, so that's pretty low-hanging fruit. And try and connect them with a contractor who can give them a price to change those out. Pretty much everything has gone to LED now. There's still some other opportunities out there, but for the most part, it's LED technologies. And we also we provide rebates that offset some of the cost of that. It's typically limited to a percentage of the project. So what we do is we put together a document that shows them you can change out these lights with these lights. This is how much you'll save. This is how much your rebate will be. Work with them to get a cost from the contractor on how much it's going to cost them and show them the payback there. And with the rebate, it's going to make generally a 2.6-year payback, below less than a 2-year payback for something like that. So we have other things as far as residential programs that are similar. Lighting, we have for residential customers, it's just a buy down of the cost of them, the LED lights that are in retail stores. To your one comment, we don't provide any kind of financing for that. I think she might have left, but we do work a little bit with Hannah Vargas, who provides, it's typically specific grants, but they do some sort of financing. And it's been brought up before. I mean, it's just something that we don't have the specialty or the capabilities. I mean, doing consumer loans these days is much more difficult than it has been, and we've just never been in that business and not really interested. What was part two?
It was around what are the barriers and how can we overcome the barriers at the PSC?
Okay, and so let me explain one thing too. So as I mentioned that the commission staff came out against that there is actually a curtain at the commission. So you have the commissioners themselves who decide cases. And this is not the commissioners providing that opinion. This is the commission staff. And they do provide guidance, but it's certainly not a requirement that the commissioners take the advice of the commission staff. And quite frequently, they do differentiate or diverge from the commission staff's opinion. And I do think that a lot of it is education, and going into this, I feel pretty confident. I mean, the message that we've gotten from the commission in the past, and we have emphasized it in some of our pre-filed testimony, just the fact that the commission has directed us that we should continue to develop energy efficiency programs in a steady fashion. So I think we're on pretty good ground there. It's one of those things that we're certainly not taking lightly, and we'll be prepared to discuss it there. But I think we have good programs, but I think we've been pretty conservative in rolling them out, so it's not too much of a cost burden for the consumers in the state.
Great. For Autumn, I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about any of the barriers that you see in terms of the work that you're doing to sort of build support among residents for going solar. And there was a specific question about policy changes that might be needed, particularly in West Virginia. I know we're going to get a little more into that in the next panel, but if there are any sort of policy changes that you see or barriers that you keep running up against in terms of deployment of rooftop solar, it would be great to sort of hear your perspective on that.
Sure, happy to talk about that. So, there are challenges on the most basic level. Just like basic consumer education is a large part of what we do. Evan's map of solar resources in the United States is a good example of information that people don't necessarily have. I get a lot of questions from folks of the ilk, well, we don't have enough sun here for solar, right? Or, people just aren't aware that solar panels are efficient and affordable cost, which leads me to the next big barrier, and that is the upfront cost. We are a low-income state. There are a lot of low-income residents here, and that upfront investment is still a real hurdle for a lot of folks. Our policy, especially for entities that can't take the investment tax credit. So if your income is low and you don't have that tax appetite, or if you are a nonprofit or a state government or a municipal facility or a church or a school, that ITC credit is a 30% off the top, and that's a big deal. It's a big cost recovery. So, we don't allow for some of the policy, we don't have the policy options currently that allow for folks to enter into power purchase agreements. And I think that's something that will be talked about in the next panel, I'm assuming that. So I don't want to dive too deep into those weeds, but there are definitely, we don't have a state tax incentive. A lot of other states do have additional tax incentives, and we do not have a renewable portfolio standard. So without an RPS, solar renewable energy credits are almost worthless in West Virginia. They cannot be, there's no internal market for SRECs in West Virginia. Just last week, Pennsylvania passed a new legislation that would require their RECs to be bought in state. So I don't know that that rule has been finalized yet, but it's coming down the pike. And so now we can sell our SRECs into Ohio only, and they're currently trading for $4 a megawatt. So, one of our installers in Virginia calls that glorified beer money, and that is pretty much what it is in West Virginia. In other states that have robust RPSs, the renewable energy credits can be really valuable and can really help offset that upfront cost. So there's certainly a lot of things that we could be doing as a state to promote solar deployment.
Great. Thanks for touching on that power purchase agreement, because somebody else had asked about that too. So I hope we'll come back to that in the next session. So I wonder if we could talk for a little bit about, for Evan, there were a couple of questions that you kind of touched on in your presentation, but maybe could dig a little bit deeper into. And one was sort of related to the chart you showed about the different types of solar jobs. So how many of them are sort of construction jobs versus like longer term employment? And I know that study was that was the one for Southwest Virginia that you were talking about, the different types of jobs. So I'd love to hear some thoughts on that.
Well, the jobs that we calculated in Southwest Virginia were in two categories. One way to divide it is two categories. One is jobs related to the construction or the installation of solar projects, and then the second set related to the maintenance of those projects over time. But in terms of the construction jobs, there's different subcategories of those. There's the actual workers that are on site assembling the project, but then there's a lot of design work and planning work and things like that that are also real jobs, as including you've got companies like Mountain View Solar that do installs that they've got probably an accountant and a bookkeeper or just a lot of jobs that you don't even think about as being part of the solar industry because they're just types of jobs that businesses have. So it's a combination of all those types of jobs for both the installation and then the maintenance of these sites. But on top of that, these were jobs that were not in my chart. What I'm about to say are the jobs that are facilitated by having the availability of solar. And that gets to things like the companies that want to buy renewable energy that are going to come to your area because they can get what they need there. So I think that while solar may not generate a huge number of jobs in the construction and installation, it's going to facilitate the creation of even more jobs.
Great. So there were several questions for you, Jim, around APCO and solar. And so one of them is around sort of the utility scale angle. And do you basically see West Virginia as a place where you might be able to do some bigger utility scale solar projects? And the other one was around why not just work on installing rooftop solar? So, could you work with, and there are innovative ways of doing demand response by grouping large numbers of, small sources together, and then you have a bigger generation source. So I wonder if you could talk first about sort of your thoughts on the utility scale side of things, and also sort of whether you have an interest in sort of the residentials or rooftop solar business as well.
Okay. So as far as what we're doing right now, we did do an RFP last year for solar, and we wanted to be able to do it as cost effective as possible. So that's the reason we put that out there. And the responses we got were quite honestly lower than what we expected. And so we did just recently sign a contract for a 15 megawatt solar installation that's going to be, it's just south of Lynchburg, Virginia, which is in our service territory. And that was essentially the most cost-effective project that was bid into it. So, and I think that we will continue to look at what are the opportunities going forward for additional projects, whether it be West Virginia or Virginia. We looked at that one and trying to decide. Quite frankly, we have a lot of investments in West Virginia and not many in Virginia. Right now, we only have one plant in Virginia. So as you're dealing with the states, it's kind of sensitive as far as where we're making our investments. But this just turned out that this was the cheapest option, and I think that we will continue to look for other options to do that. And as far as the rooftop solar and getting into that, this goes back to what I was talking about earlier as far as the economics. It is just so much more economical to do universal scale solar than it is rooftop solar. As we were talking about this, and I was kind of pushing that we needed to do some sort of project, even if it's only 5 megawatts, our folks in corporate that have their thumb on this pulse a little bit more quickly educated me that you've got to get to at least 10 megawatts to have economies of scale. And it is just a matter of, as you get economies of scale, the price is less than half for a large-scale solar array like that, which essentially that's what you're putting on the rates. So I mean, we want to do whatever the most cost-effective thing is to make the rates as cheap as possible.
So maybe any of you can answer this, and this might be more of around the policy barriers and stuff. And by the way, if folks have more questions, please write them down and send them up this way. There's a question around, and this might get to the distinction of sort of what Autumn is talking about in terms of rooftop, residential solar, but then also looking at larger commercial buildings. Are there specific sort of barriers, or why don't we see more of solar development on sort of larger flat roofs in shopping centers and things like that? So, that's something different than what Solar Neighbors United works on, right? But I wonder if you all have thoughts about getting more of the small commercial projects sort of built.
Well, I can start. You guys can jump in. I mean, we do invite businesses to join our co-ops as well as homeowners, so we're always happy to work with business owners as well. Again, I think a lot of education needs to be done so people understand that this is a good investment for their business and that it's going to save them money. Beyond that, again, you run up against that initial cost, and for a business to, finance a large scale system that's going to involve taking out a pretty big loan, that may impact their ability to access other financing in the future. So they have to make that decision, on a case-by-case basis for them. But yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity for a lot more businesses in West Virginia to be doing this, and there's really no good reason why they shouldn't. They should do it. Do you have anything to add to that?
I think that's pretty accurate. We're a small business, and we moved to a new building 6 months ago, which is perfect for solar. We've even gotten a quote, but we haven't done it yet just because it's hard running a small business, and cash flow is a difficult thing, and we just haven't taken the plunge, even though we know the sooner we do it, the quicker we'll get that payback.
One thing that I would add is it seems like as people start looking at their energy sources, and businesses especially, as they're looking at that, it's kind of like the numbers that you were showing up there for the city of Morgantown. You start looking at that, your best initial investment is in energy efficiency measures, and I think that it kind of creates an awareness. And so, I mean, in a small business setting, and you're just moving in a new building, if you can insulate that and lower your usage first, then it makes your need for solar panels even that much, but the payback is so much quicker.
Yeah, I would totally agree that energy efficiency and solar really go hand in hand, and I would really encourage everyone to start with those efficiency upgrades to make your home or property as efficient as possible. And once you start thinking about your energy usage, and solar is great for this, it really mobilizes people to take an active role in their energy use and consumption, and they become much more aware of how many, kilowatt hours they're using every day on what, and become much more efficient in their energy use. Same with, once you start thinking about energy efficiency improvements, it just, it's really important that people start to become actively engaged in our energy system. And these are two ways that I think that does happen.
That's really great, and it leads into another sort of question that was, a couple of questions that were asked, and Jim, you touched on this a bit, which is, what are more ways that we can do, what more can be done to sort of encourage businesses and households to be more energy efficient? And I was kind of surprised that, you quoted some pretty low numbers about the people being aware of the programs that you have, 30 or 50%, and that's something that was kind of surprising to me, because when you start to think about how to reach consumers, utilities are one of the places you would go to that have a reach into every household. Like, we all get a utility bill, right, in some form or another. So I wonder if you want to expand a little more on that. And the other specific question they have, and I think I know how you're going to answer this, is around sort of, you know, if you're doing a lot of energy efficiency, you're specifically drawing down the demand for, you know, electricity. And so how does that jive with sort of, you know, your motivation to sell electricity to make money? So I wonder if you would want to comment on both of those things.
Sure. As far as the awareness, it is difficult. I mean, surprisingly, but people don't read the inserts that we put in utility bills. I don't know why, but they're very interesting. We spend a lot of time on them. But it is. It does seem like a little bit of a mystery. I would say that most of us probably know closer to what our neighbor's salary is versus what somebody else that lives in a house that looks just like ours energy bill is. And it'd be interesting just to take a poll in this room. What do you think the average home's electric bill is? And I mean, different people would have different perceptions, and it always amazes me, and we do. I mean, we're trying to help some of the poorest people in our community whenever they get bills. It was stated in one of the previous conversations that we have one of the highest instances of home ownership in the state, but we also have some of the poorest housing. And some of those folks have worked on different, like, high bill complaints, and they are just very proud, and they don't want to look at what is causing these high bills. And you see these, and it's very rare that a meter goes bad. And when a meter goes bad, it typically just dies. It doesn't overread, it underreads. But people are very skeptical because you can't see it. So, and we understand that. But as you're quizzing them, I mean, you find that some of these people, they're heating their houses with ovens, the different space heaters and things that, and you find that, I mean, somebody that has like a $500 electric bill and is getting $900 a month in government assistance, they have no hope of paying that. So that's why you would have some of those programs. And it is just a matter of creating the awareness that there is a significant amount of opportunity for them to do something about that. I mean, there's weatherization agencies, and that's one of the things that we do is we provide funding to those weatherization agencies to do that. But you've got to get those people in the queue. They've got to hear about it, and they've got to take that first step to do it. And somewhat specifically, the new programs that I was showing you up there, that kind of goes to address some of this. The small business direct install is essentially a door-to-door type approach. I mean, just going to small businesses, knocking on the door, say, hey, we have this program. We can come in and assess your lighting. It just looks at the low-hanging fruit, and you hope that develops a gateway for them to look at other opportunities beyond that. But trying to make it the beginning to end help that they can take that step and start to change out some of that lighting.
Yeah, and you know, the way I've always said it is in the context of addressing climate change. We need an army of people with duct tape. You know, and one of the things that I've always found exciting about that, not that duct tape is that exciting, but that you know, creating those jobs. I mean, those are jobs that can't be outsourced. You know, and so this is for you or for anyone else that wants to respond to it, but I wonder how much thought has been given, particularly here in West Virginia, about how to create that army of energy auditors, right? Because it's like you as the utility, you can't, like you mentioned earlier, not being able to handle X tens of thousands of consumer loans to do to finance those projects, but you also can't hire enough energy auditors to like visit every home in every county in your service area. So that means we need third-party folks to go around and do those energy audits. And I don't know if anybody has thought about that, particularly for West Virginia, and how we might stimulate that sort of investment.
Yeah, and that is something I I haven't been as engaged in it, but when we were launching our programs, the community college system was very active in training folks and getting people through that program. That was part of the retraining, was to make them BPI certified auditors, and that was. I mean, I know several people that went through that, and several of them worked for us as auditors to do these home evaluations, and I do think that there's quite an opportunity there. I mean, we work in West Virginia and Virginia, and then we also have a sister company in Ohio, and we do craft our programs differently between West Virginia and Virginia, where we have in the past, just because there is more contractors, more folks that provide that in the communities. So we don't want to be in competition with them. We just want to be a facilitator to help to work with them there. So Virginia has a little bit better of a network of folks that are engaged in that.
Other thoughts on energy efficiency jobs? Have you done much work on the job piece around energy efficiency, Adam?
Well, we've looked at whether Downstream should try to get into that space, because there's so few people in West Virginia doing that, like you're saying. And we didn't do a formal market survey, but the research we did, it just didn't seem like there were enough people willing to spend the money to pay someone to come into their home and do these audits. At least we didn't have enough of an indication that made it worth it for us to invest the time and money to develop a new program. That being said, like Jim said, there's a lot of people who make a living doing this in other states. So there's definitely money to be made, and there is an opportunity. I'm just not sure how to get past that hump. So I'm just asking the same question that you are. I don't know the answer to it.
Yeah, it's difficult to get people interested and engaged in it, but I would think that once you're in that business, it just becomes word of mouth. I mean, it was very at a very opportune time, but we had a TV station that wanted to follow along with one of our home audits one time. So you've got to find somebody that's willing to let you bring a TV station into their house. And I will tell you, when we did some surveys trying to figure out how to get more people to participate, the number one reason that people don't want to participate and get an energy audit is because they don't want to have to clean their house for somebody to come to their house. and so, I mean, that's it. They feel like they got to clean the house, straighten the house, whatever. So I asked a gentleman that I go to church with if he would allow us to do that. And so we went in there, we set up a blower door test, and sure as a world, and he had no idea that this is this way, but he had a duct from, his ductwork was in his crawl space. The duct had come loose from his dining room, and so his dining room, that means his dining room is open to the crawl space, whatever the temperature of the crawl space is, and that air that's coming out of that ductwork is just dumping into his crawl space. And I mean, he talks to me all the time about how much he saved from that. And fortunately, we had the cameras rolling and everything. And so, I mean, when you have customers like that, they tell their neighbors, and that's it takes a while, but I think those kind of testimonials, just that you're not aware of where your house is leaking or where you can save energy, different things like that. So.
I would imagine you have similar stories, Autumn, when you talk about solar, right? When you start to get these installations going, and then people talk.
And I mean, personally, speaking from personal experience, I went solar about 3 years ago, and we had a solar open house the following summer, just to invite, because neighbors stopped by and asked, "Oh, I see you have solar panels. How are they working?" You know, so more than 40 people came from all over the state, and at least 3 other folks went solar after that, and several family members have felt like the pressure to go solar since we did. So, you know, we've got like brothers and cousins who have gone solar as well, and it's totally true. Once you see it in your neighborhood, it kind of demystifies the technology, and there is a keeping up with the Joneses element as well. You know, if Autumn and Dan can do it, then like we got to do it too. So, I think the snowball effect definitely takes. solar is a little easier because it's visible and people are aware of it in that way. Energy efficiency has the additional challenge of being like not as visible, and the results are a lower electric bill, which is great if you're the person enjoying those lowered bills, but it's a little more challenging. I mean, you're not necessarily going to show your neighbor your like lowered electric bill, so yeah, energy efficiency is tough.
Yeah, it's a little less sexy, I guess. Right. I do have one more question. Do I have time for you? So somebody's going to have to help me with the acronym. So there was a question around the SMUD success around, and if Jim, if you've looked at that as a model for West Virginia in terms of shutting down coal plants, and I'm not sure actually what the question is referring to. I'm usually pretty good with acronyms living in DC, but this one is escaping me. So
I've heard that acronym, but I'm not exactly sure what it is.
can somebody remind me?
Sacramento Municipal Utility.
The Sacramento.
And so what
The
they
SMUD.
do?
Well, they were running out of power capacity as a utility, landlocked by the city. And it was 10, 12, 15 years ago, they went into the business of solar cells on commercial buildings, churches, and they went into the business of doing that and leasing them to their owners in a manner that the owners never put up any money up front.
So
It's a huge success story.
So it's kind of similar to the earlier question around, you know, why not get into the rooftop
Right.
solar business, right?
Yeah.
And the economics are different. Obviously, you mentioned before, you know, the economies of scale you want to capture with sort of a utility scale
Well,
system.
and to kind of address that specifically, if you look at it and you're running one of the cost-benefit analysis of it, in Sacramento, they're paying somewhere around 18 cents a kilowatt hour, I would say. In West Virginia, you're paying about 11 cents a kilowatt hour. If you put a solar panel on a building in Sacramento, it's going to be north of 30% capacity factor, probably around 36% capacity factor. The same one in West Virginia will be, I won't misquote you,
I don't know.
mid-20 capacity factor. So the economics don't work with it as well, and the fact that we're not landlocked in West Virginia, so if we are going to do solar, it makes sense to do more of a universal scale 10 megawatt solar array so that you're getting the price significantly less for that same thing. It does make sense in a landlocked area, so I understand that.
That's great. Well,
Another example is on my card too, and that is the province of Ontario, who took into account the cost of healthcare directly attributable to coal-fired power plants, and realized that solar and renewables were cheaper than coal when you added all of the external costs, environmental, health, so on. So Ontario embarked on a program in 2005 to shut down all their coal-fired power plants. Completed it about 2 years ago, and they've subsequently, and they switched to renewable energy. By the way, a solar power plant in Sault Ste. Marie, so you're never too far north on the planet to have solar energy.
The other thing to keep in mind though too is like we haven't talked much about the climate benefits, but you know, and I was really interested, Evan, we should talk some more about the corporate accountability or the corporate angle of you know, purchasing renewable energy. But the other value proposition to a company like Google or Amazon that's trying to go 100% renewable is that, you know, putting renewable energy here you know, does a lot more for it in terms of reducing carbon emissions than it does in a place that doesn't have much coal. So I think there's another value proposition to be made for that. But I think we're about out of time, and so I think if we could just go ahead and thank our panel. This is great.
So we'll take a quick 10-minute break. It'll be last for